Good evening. You're watching the News at 6 with me, Ishan Russell. The News at 6 is all about the day's biggest developing stories, and we'll be filling you in on them over the next half hour. But first, the headlines that we're tracking right now. In the run-up to India-Pakistan NSA-level talks in Delhi, detention drama plays out in Srinagar. Separatist leaders arrested and freed after 2 hours. A day after granting approvals to 11 entities for payment banks, the RBI says it will announce licenses to small finance banks next month. Striking FTII students seek the Prime Minister's intervention. The government deputes senior INB department officials to resolve the crisis. In Rajasthan, the BJP takes the lead in civic election results, but Chief Minister Vasundhara Raje and son Dushyant suffer setback. And in cricket, Lokesh Rahul scores century, partner skipper Virat Kohli to take India out of trouble on the first day of the second test match against Sri Lanka. A top story this evening, a detention drama played out in Srinagar today, with the state government first arresting and then releasing Kashmiri separatist leaders a couple of hours later. Now, the move comes amid the High Commission of Pakistan's invitation to the separatists to meet Sartaj Aziz, the NSA, during the NSA-level talks in Delhi.
After the Union Cabinet meeting on Thursday, the government clarified that the NSA-level talks on 23rd and 24th of this month will focus on the topics of terror and security alone.
The agenda of this meeting was settled in the UFA meeting to talk on terror, including the exchange of voice samples for 26/11. Therefore, this meeting is for talking on terror and the need to prevent it.
Earlier in the day, the Jammu and Kashmir government put all Hurriyat leaders under house arrest in Srinagar in an apparent attempt to prevent them from meeting Pakistani NSA Sartaj Aziz in New Delhi. A short while later, it inexplicably released them.
I don't think they were released because of pressure. I think they were released because the government wanted to send a signal that we are under control here, and if you do not mend your ways, or if needed, we can arrest you at any time, at any place.
The government seems to have indicated to Hurriyat leaders that they need to respect the red lines decided for Pakistan.
What is the purpose of talking to Hurriyat? I don't know. Is the Pakistan NSA, Mr. Sartaj Aziz, going to take his brief from the Hurriyat leadership and then go talk to the Indian NSA?
Hurriyat leaders have been told they can meet Aziz after the NSA meet. The government also reminded them that they had never been stopped from visiting the Pakistani High Commission.
The Pakistan High Commission has been repeatedly inviting separatist leaders to discussions. Separatist leaders have been invited to receptions and functions, and on their Independence Day, Pakistan Independence Day, they do invite them.
मेरा कहना है, खुदा करे जो ये मीटिंग हो, it will make a breakthrough.
The ball is now in Pakistan's court on whether it wants to call off the talks. Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has himself said it was the responsibility of both countries to end terror. With Akhilesh Suman, Bureau Inputs, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now on to our focus story for this evening. After granting approval to 11 entities for payments banks, the RBI today said it will announce small finance bank licenses next month. The RBI chief, Raghuram Rajan, said that these new banks would not pose any competitive threat to the existing bank. He rather sees them as a feeder service for the universal banks.
RBI Chief Raghuram Rajan said the payment banks will complement the traditional banking sector rather than compete with it. On Wednesday, the RBI granted approval to 11 entities for payment banks. The list includes some big names like Reliance Industries, Aditya Birla Nuvo, and telecom companies like Airtel and Vodafone. They have 18 months to submit their plans and get the final license.
We're trying to create this bill payment, bill trading facility. It's called TREDS. And we've got 6 or 7 applications so far. We're examining them, and hopefully by November we should be able to announce a couple of platforms or more for TREDS.
These new banks will be allowed to provide payments and remittance services. The upper slab for deposit in these banks is restricted to 1 lakh rupees. They can also use ATM and debit cards and distribute mutual fund and insurance products. However, it will not issue any credit cards. Rajan said that payments banks will also help increase the utility of new bank accounts opened under the Jan Dhan Yojana. However, he does not see these banks transforming into universal entities.
There are two facets to this, of course. The regulator can't be so heavy-handed that any innovation is stamped out. At the same time, we have to be careful that something doesn't grow big under our nose and then becomes too big to stop and then creates massive problems for the system.
Rajan also said that RBI would announce small finance bank licenses next month, for which it has received over 70 applications. The small finance banks, which are aimed at helping small farmers, micro and small industries and unorganized sector entities. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And senior journalist Priyaranjan Dosh now joins us to help us understand, Priyaranjan. Now, this move by the RBI, it certainly is aimed at widening the financial sector, the banking sector. And what kind of ramifications do you see for the sector? And does this mean benefits for the consumer as well?
This does bring benefits to the consumer. This is another channel. Basically, these are going to be e-payment banks to be operated through mobile telephones and ATMs for various payments. So that makes more of these entities coming into the market. To that extent, the service will be more widespread and available to the consumer, and hopefully at a cheaper cost, because these payment banks for basic banking services, especially for payments and money transfer, would pose competitive pressure on the regular banks, and the cost of fee, etc., for the consumers would be lower. So this is more service or easier service, particularly for electronics e-payment, and at a cheaper cost. So it's a win-win actually for the consumers.
All right, so for consumer, great benefit. But as far as the banking sector itself goes, there have been many who've been saying that the banking sector needs to be widened. Financial inclusion is, of course, one of the major initiatives of the Narendra Modi government, and we've seen that with the Jan Dhan Yojana. And as RBI Chief Raghuram Rajan himself was pointing out, that widening of the banking sector would mean that proper utilization of these accounts that have been opened in the Jan Dhan Yojana. So in that sense, what changes do you see in the banking sector in the near future?
Well, you see, the banking sector is being expanded precisely because you need to have more financial inclusion. And Jan Dhan Yojana has, in terms of basic banking services, making it accessible to the bottom of the pyramid. Jan Dhan Yojana, those accounts opening initiative or the campaign has really worked. But as you know, most of those accounts, or a large percentage of those accounts, are actually no transactions and zero balance accounts.
Right.
So, but having said that, clearly that has contributed towards greater financial inclusion and making banking accessible to the poor people. And these initiatives, the payment bank initiatives especially, yes, to an extent, it will also complement the efforts being made to inclusion, but this will help the normal, the regular banking customers today, because you could use these payment banks as channels for making electronics payment, particularly mobile payments, which are going to expand as we get into more of digital, markets. Transactions.
All right, just a little bit about the small finance banks also that the RBI chief talked about over there, and the fact that the government's other programs like Make in India, etc., do depend heavily on ensuring the spread of smaller industrial units, etc. So do you think more is being done on that front? And that was perhaps one area, that is why these bigger programs and these bigger ideas were facing implementation hurdles?
Like, these banks are payment banks, but they can't extend credit.
Right.
For smaller
No, I'm talking about the small finance banks.
Yes,
that the
for smaller,
governor
that's what
talked
I'm saying. For smaller borrowers, especially for small industries and micro enterprises, small businesses, where availability of credit remains a large question, especially when, even when they do their own bill discounting, availability of credit against their bills is also a problem for these small businesses and enterprises. Now, to the extent that new small finance banks would be licensed, that and they will be exclusively for providing credit facilities to small enterprises. That will be further complementing the regular financing system that you have, which often escapes these small enterprises.
All right, we'll leave it over there. But Mr. Priyaranjan Das, thank you very much for coming in and helping us understand the significant moves by the RBI that ultimately do benefit you and I and the consumer at the end of the day. Thank you so much for coming in and helping us understand this a little better. Well, moving on now, in a bid to check black money, the NDA government approved the ratification of the agreement between India and the Seychelles for exchange of information on taxes. The decision was taken at the cabinet meeting today. This will enable competent authorities of both countries to enforce the domestic laws concerning taxes. Similar bilateral agreements for exchange of tax information have been signed by India with several other countries, including Argentina, Bahamas, Bahrain, Bermuda, British Virgin Islands and the Cayman Islands.
Any abuse of the land of India or the country of Seychelles for money transaction in an authorized manner, regardless of the fact whether he is a resident or not, is amenable to information sharing. All the types of taxes imposed by the government of India, regardless of the manner of recovery, and all the taxes imposed by Seychelles, regardless of the manner of recovery, is amenable to disagreement as far as information sharing is concerned.
Now, the striking students of the Film and Television Institute of Pune have now sought the Prime Minister's intervention to resolve the ongoing crisis over appointments. The protesting students want Prime Minister Modi to visit the institute. The government too has rushed in a delegation of senior INB officials to resolve the impasse. The matter escalated on Wednesday when 5 students were arrested on charges of rioting and misbehaving with the institute's director, who was allegedly gayed out for hours. Though they were later granted bail, the students refused to compromise on demands. Academic activity in FTII has been badly hit since the 12th of June after the students went on a flash strike against the appointment of Gajendra Chauhan as the chairman.
अगर वो हमसे स्ट्राइक वापस लेने की उम्मीद करते हैं तो वो मुद्दों को सुलझा के सॉल्व करके फिर स्ट्राइक वापस करवाने की कोशिश करें, rather than दमन करके या 12 बजे रात में पुलिस भेज के स्ट्राइक तुड़वाने की कोशिश करें.
Deep sense of disappointment that students who have actually been raising their questions and their protests in the most dignified way, at the end of the day, the only response they get is a really trumped up charges in the middle of the night. The police show up.
Now, in a neck-and-neck contest, the BJP emerged victorious in the civic polls in Rajasthan, winning 65 of the 129 seats. The Congress won 27 seats, while independents emerged victorious in 17. The verdict, however, was a major setback for Rajasthan Chief Minister Vasundhara Raje, as the BJP lost in her home turf of Jhalawar and Jalrapatan municipality. This was the first electoral test for Raje since the Lalit Modi controversy erupted, in which she's been implicated. While the Prime Minister expressed his delight over the BJP's win, the Congress said the result is a moral defeat for the BJP.
The Congress party had unleashed a campaign of calumny, bordering on malicious falsehood against Shivraj Singh Chauhan and Vasundhara Raje. But the people really gave the effective reply to the Congress party, and that these allegations are absolutely false and untenable.
कांग्रेस की शानदार जीत पर मैं उन सभी जीते हुए लोगों को मुबारकबाद देना चाहता हूं और आपको बताना चाहता हूं कि ये झालावाड़ और बारां के अंदर और धौलपुर के अंदर जो बहुत विवादों में रहा, जिसको अपना गृह क्षेत्र मानती है मुख्यमंत्री महोदया, वहां पर भी कांग्रेस पार्टी ने परचम फहराया है. इन तमाम जगहों पर जीत दर्ज कराकर जनता के माध्यम से कांग्रेस पार्टी ने इस बात को साबित किया है कि आज पूरे प्रदेश की जनता हमारी तरफ उम्मीद की नजर से देख रही है।
Well, let's go across to our correspondent Sham Sundar, who's been tracking these results for us and would help us analyze them. Now, Sham, the Congress calls it a setback for the BJP, but is it? What is your reading? Has the Lalit Modi controversy that Vasundhara Raje has been mired in over the past 2 months, has that made an impact on the civic polls?
We have covered many civic elections and assembly elections, and we have seen that assembly elections, Lok Sabha election and civic elections, they are totally different elections. If we talk about Rajasthan elections, more than 700 independent candidates have won in these elections. So it is very clear indication that civic elections are totally different elections, and Chief Minister Vasundhara Raje didn't campaign at all for these elections. But yes, of course, every party has a reason and right to celebrate its victory, and BJP is celebrating its victory in Rajasthan after Madhya Pradesh. But the way BJP is trying to project these results as a referendum on the issue of Lalit Gate or Vyapam, I think BJP has to think again on this issue, because if this is the case, then how more than 700 independent candidates have won, and especially in the constituency of Vasundhara Raje, in Jhalawar, Congress has given a tough contest to BJP, and it has won two major seats there. So BJP would try to project these results as if it is referendum on the issue of Vyapam and Lalit Gate. But the way Congress has performed in Rajasthan, it is not bad at all. The way in last 1 year BJP is performing and the way Congress was going down.
All right, on that note, we'll have to wrap it up. Sham, we apologize to our viewers for that audio problem over there with Sham's voice. But what Sham was basically saying was that it is a situation that will indeed develop as far as the politics of Rajasthan goes, and the Congress not completely out as of now. On that note, we'll take a very quick break, but coming up on the other side, Yemen stares at famine after conflict hits millions in the country.
Despite the border provocations, despite rising tensions, India-Pak NSA level talks to go on as scheduled. What can the talks achieve? And can they lead to improved relations? Watch the big picture at 6:30 p.m. on Rajya Sabha TV.
Welcome back. You're watching the news at 6. Now, in a fight to curb acid attacks, the government is taking various steps to regulate acid sales. One of them is an online portal that will track the supplies and demand for acid. But activists point out that this may have little effect on checking its availability.
And horrifying crime. In its efforts to crack down on acid attacks, the government is hoping to regularize and track acid sales through online portal. Responding to a parliament question on the issue, the government also listed nodal groups to monitor such sales in each state.
India is a vast country, and we need to first of all digest the reality that even today most of the part of the country, people do not have access to internet, and one is access to internet, the other is they for that matter don't even have a computer to basically get themselves accustomed to forget about even registering.
According to government figures, the country saw 310 acid attacks in 2014. Uttar Pradesh had the maximum 186 cases, while Madhya Pradesh reported 53, followed by 27 in Delhi, 11 in Gujarat, 7 in Haryana, 6 in Maharashtra. Punjab and Andhra Pradesh reported 4 cases each, and Bihar and Odisha with 3 cases each.
बैन ना हो सकता, कम से कम उससे रेगुलेट तो किया जाए ताकि केसेस कहीं ना कहीं हम लोग हद तक रोक सकें। जैसे कि हमने लास्ट ईयर पहले हम लोग पुलिस वालों से जब पूछते थे कि एसिड के कितने केसेस हुए तो 100 समथिंग वो लोग बोलते थे, लेकिन 2013 में जब हमने सर्वे किया तो 309 केसेस हमने पाए एसिड के 1 साल के अंदर। तो वो 309 केसेस किस वजह से हुए? सिर्फ एक एसिड की वजह से। वो एसिड क्यों मिल रहा है लोगों को? तो मैं चाहती हूँ गवर्नमेंट इसको बैन लगाए।
We should definitely ensure that the onus also lies onto the shopkeepers who sell the acid, but at the same time the regulation ought to be done by the state. And for that, I mean, you just cannot sit quietly and wait for the shopkeepers to come and get yourself registered. There has to be a cross-check mechanism wherein, I mean, there's continuous rigorous checkings of the shops whether it is happening or not.
Earlier in April this year, the Supreme Court had asked private hospitals to treat acid attack victims for free. It also banned over-the-counter sales of acid, none of which has had any effect on acid sales. Activists say an online portal could just be one more in the list of such failed steps. Anshu Jaising's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Let's now get you some more news and updates from around the country and nationwide. The Supreme Court today rejected the CBI's petition for more time to present its submissions on the quantum of sentence in the Upahar fire tragedy case. A 3-judge bench said it can't entertain such requests after the order's been passed. The Supreme Court had yesterday allowed real estate magnates Gopal and Sushil Ansal to walk free after asking them to pay a fine of 60 crore rupees. A special court granted bail to Rajya Sabha MP Vijay Darda and 5 others in a case pertaining to alleged irregularities in a locked-in coal blocks in Chhattisgarh. The relief was given on a personal bond of 1 lakh rupees each with a surety of the like amount. The court issued summons against the accused for criminal conspiracy and cheating. The Goa police conducted searches at the residence of former Chief Minister of Goa, Digambar Kamath, in connection with the Louis Berger bribery case. The investigators are looking reportedly for the file that awarded the consultancy for a project funded by the Japan International Cooperation Agency. Kamath and former PWD Minister Churchill Almao are among those who've been named in the bribery case. Now, the heads of 14 Pacific Island nations met in New Delhi today ahead of the second FTII summit. Hoping to strengthen ties with the resource-rich nations, India is pushing for deeper engagement in a range of key areas, including trade and investment.
A day before the second edition of the FTII summit gets underway in Jaipur, President Pranab Mukherjee welcomed the heads of the 14 Pacific Island countries. Vice President Mohammad Hamid Ansari, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj were also present to receive the dignitaries at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. The President said the island nations are generously endowed with natural resources and India is keen on working with them to harness their mineral, marine and hydrocarbon resources.
We would be happy to work with you in harnessing your mineral, marine and hydrocarbon resources. Our government and private sectors are keen to strengthen and diversify our bilateral trade and encourage investments in fisheries, agriculture, oil and natural gas, mining and water desalination.
India has enhanced its annual aid to these nations from $1,25,000 to $2 lakh to help support shared projects. President also highlighted the challenges faced by India and the Pacific countries due to climate change. He suggested sharing finances and technology transfers to combat its impact. India also proposed enhancing engagement in infrastructure, healthcare and energy sectors. The President also thanked the heads of the countries for their support to India's bid for permanent membership in United Nations Security Council.
We greatly appreciate the support we have received from you for our candidature for permanent membership of an expanded United Nations Security Council.
The summit will help India chart a new course in its relationship with the island nations, extending India's Act East policy. Akhilesh Suman's report with Bureau Inputs for Rajya Sabha TV.
For other international stories, here's Global Buzz. Thailand's ruling military junta has claimed that the Bangkok blast is unlikely to be the work of any international terrorist outfit. Earlier, the investigators had suspected that the suspect in question was of foreign origin. The government called on international help in probing the attack on the Erawan shrine, which left 20 dead. A car bomb near an Egyptian government building in courthouse wounded at least 29 people. According to eyewitnesses, the militants carried out a car bomb blast targeting an office of the State Security Department. Militants linked to the Islamic State group are suspected to be behind the attack. The World Food Programme has warned that millions in Yemen are at the risk of famine amid the ongoing conflict. The UN agency estimates that the number of food-insecure people in Yemen is now close to 13 million. More than 1.2 million children are suffering from moderate to acute malnutrition, and over 500,000 children are severely malnourished. Now, opener KL Rahul's century helped India reach 319 for 6 at the end of day 1 of the second test against Sri Lanka in Colombo. Batting first, the visitors started poorly by losing opener Murli Vijay in the first over. Rahane followed shortly with just 12 runs on the board. Captain Virat Kohli and Rahul then combined for a 164-run third-wicket partnership to pull India out of the rough. This was Lokesh Rahul's second test century. After Kohli departed for 78th, Rohit Sharma scored a half-century to provide support to Rahul. Rohit Sharma was out in the last over of the day for 79. Rangana Herath and Dhamika Prasad took 2 wickets each for the hosts.
Yes, he's taking his chances here. Dives.
All the other sporting action now in Sports Beat. Australia started the 5th in the final Ashes Test on a strong note. In the morning session, Australia were 82 for no loss after they were put into bat first. David Warner completed his half-century while Chris Rogers was batting at 27 at lunch. Australia have already lost the Ashes 3-1. Ace Indian shuttler Saina Nehwal regained top spot in the women's singles in the new World Badminton Federation rankings. She moved up a place to dethrone Spain's Carolina Marin. Saina created history by becoming the first Indian to reach the World Championship final, but had to settle for silver after losing to Marin in straight sets. The Indo-Swiss pair of Sania Mirza and Martina Hingis started their Cincinnati Masters campaign with a straight sets win to enter the women's doubles quarterfinals. The top seeders beat unseeded German-Polish pair of Julia Georges and Claudia Jans-Jagnik 7-6, 6-4. In men's singles, Andy Murray and Rafael Nadal advanced to the third round of the Cincinnati Masters. Murray had to toil hard to beat American Marty Fish in 2 sets. Nadal showed some positive signs of returning to form after he beat Frenchman Jeremy Chardy 6-3, 6-4. Well, that's all from us. Goodbye.